one of the most basic questions that comes up time and time again with folks has to do with owning real property in a trust. The reason why folks have a question about this is, and you will remember this, there's a little bit of homework after you sign your documents with a trust. And so that bit of homework is you have to transfer title of your assets into your trust. So the bank accounts, the real estate, all of that stuff. Clients, generally are wondering, well, what does it mean if I own my property in a trust? And so where this comes up a lot is if they're buying a piece of property for the first time and they have a trust, or if they're selling a piece of property that they own in trust, or even refinancing a property. Rates have been great for a very long time. They're still great historically. Folks are still out there refinancing their properties that they've put into their trust. And when we create an estate plan, the first and foremost thing is get your real property into your trust. And so we'll do a grant deed. We'll record it. That means that Joe and Jane Smith, who owned the property, it's now Joe and Jane Smith as trustees of their trust. But say you don't own property yet. Say you've created your estate plan and you're looking to buy that first piece of property, or you're looking to buy a new piece of property. A lot of folks don't realize they don't have to buy it individually and then transfer it to their trust. They can actually buy it in the name of their trust. So again, instead of Joe and Jane Smith, it's Joe and Jane Smith as trustees of their trust. And it's important when you're starting the process that you kind of make everyone aware of this, including escrow and title, because they're probably going to ask you for some, additional documents. They'll want to look at the trust. They'll want a copy of the certification of trust, all of that good stuff. It's no harm, no foul if you buy it in your name and then realize, whoops, I was supposed to put it into the trust. It's just by buying it directly in the trust, the client is going to save some time and some money. They don't have to go back and do that extra deed, which is, probably going to be on their dime. They're going to have to go to somebody like me or deed service and get that deed into the trust done. So it's a real quick way to just get it into your trust when you buy it. Similarly, as you know, Joe, when you sell a piece of real property that you own in trust, the seller isn't going to be Joe and Jane Smith. It's going to be Joe and Jane Smith as trustees of their trust. There might be a little bit of extra paperwork, some disclosures and things related to the trust. But other than that, it's really the same process. There's no additional difficulties or complications about, buying or selling property in trust. And so that's, I know, a concern for a lot of people. So they're usually pretty relieved to hear that. One thing that does pop up as well has to do with refinancing. And this is probably something that, is more common with folks because this is something you might do several times over your lifetime. So you buy that forever house and, over the course of 20 or 30 years or more, you're probably going to refinance a couple different times. Maybe there's a lower rate, for instance, or you want to go from a 30-year to a 15-year, maybe pay out that house a little bit quicker. One of the biggest things that I just put on people's radar is if they're refinancing their home, oftentimes the process is that the house is taken out of trust, that refinance is processed, and then it's supposed to go back into the trust. So essentially the client ends up in the same place in terms of the title of their property. It's in the trust. We're going to avoid probate, which is why we put that trust together for them. But there can be instances where sometimes, unfortunately, it doesn't get back into the trust. So we process that refinance transaction and that grant deed doesn't get signed to put the property back into trust. And so I tell my clients, when you're thinking about refinancing, just keep in mind at the end of the process, you want to just confirm with escrow and title that they've put the house back into trust. Because again, that's something, that they can help you out with versus you having to do it later.
So why is that you have to, if you're doing a refinance, why you have to take it out of the trust and then put it back in?
Well, there's a couple different reasons. One is I'm sure the legal department is not keen on having to go through and review all the terms of the trust. That's sort of my suspicion as a practitioner. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that generally speaking, when you're taking out the loan, you're taking it out as an individual. And then the trust is what we call an additional insured. And so because of that, they will generally take the property out of trust, do the refinance, individually, new loan in place in the individual names. And then of course, once you've done that, you can do whatever you want with the property, including putting it back into trust. And so I think that is the official answer there. So there is a method to the madness. It's not just something that, lenders are doing willy-nilly, but it's something to be aware of because most clients don't notice that happening in the background. They're just kind of signing the paperwork and, lo and behold, maybe it didn't get back in.